A retiree who now spends time on the golf course became the main story of SEC Media Days. Not just any retiree, of course. We're talking about Nick Saban and a rumor that surfaced on Monday before SEC Media Days began that Nick Saban might be interested in a return to coaching. Keywords being rumor and might. Welcome into SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. John, I think we expected maybe a little bit of a mundane SEC Media Days. We talked before about how this event has lost a little bit of its luster in recent years, but then Greg McElroy to the rescue. One of your favorite analysts, I say that sarcastically, surfaced a rumor on his radio show Monday morning saying that someone he knows who's, quote, in the know, believes that Nick Saban wants to get back to coaching. McElroy later said that it was a couple people who told him that Saban would be interested in coaching again. And then later in the day, McElroy said that he didn't believe this rumor at all. Never mind the fact that he was the one that introduced the rumor. So what say you, John? What do you make of all this noise that has really kind of taken on a life of its own at SEC Media Days this week with several active coaches in the SEC, including Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin, Kirby Smart, all weighing in on this idea of Nick Saban maybe or maybe not returning to football coaching someday?
Maybe we should have done that. It would have been very easy, as you say. Just come out, well, I talked to someone in the know, or we could say we talked to someone who we think could be in the know. And they said they think, what if Nick Saban returned to coaching? Well, there you go. That's a rumor. Let's present it. And then we could come back on our next podcast and say, what a ridiculous idea that Nick Saban would return to coaching. Ha!
Yeah, which is basically what Greg McElroy did. McElroy almost acted perplexed as to why this was becoming a story. It's like, well, because you floated this rumor out into the public domain, and not only it would have been different if McElroy just raised it as a talking point, right? Like just off the wall. Do we think Nick Saban? But no, he said he talked to someone in the know who thought that Saban will be a coach again, and then later said it was a couple people who told him that Saban was interested in returning to coaching. So for McElroy to act later perplexed as to why this story gained legs is, I think, it's just kind of boneheaded on his part. But that aside,
well, I as bizarre as this suggestion might seem to Greg McElroy, since he did lead Alabama and Nick Saban's Alabama to a national championship, I would kind of think he had Nick's number. And he might be able to call him and say, hey, coach, somebody, quote, in the know, said you might be thinking about returning to coaching. I kind of thought I'd throw that out there on my radio show. What's your take on it? You got a take? I know that might seem extreme to actually call someone who could verify or deny it real quick, particularly when you seemingly are a person in the know where it comes to Nick Saban. But that never happened, and it became a talking point. And that is the most significant thing that happens to SEC Media Days. This event has really, really lost a lot of its clout, I think. It's just...
Well, and I think it also speaks, too, John, to the fact that even 18 months after his retirement, Nick Saban remains the most famous figure in college football, even though he's not in college football anymore. I mean, he's on the ESPN set on College Game Day, but he's not coaching. He's not really active in college football other than being a talking head, and he poses in some photos when recruits come to Alabama and want to pick with the GOAT. Well, he'll smile and get a photo with him. But, I mean, this guy's been out of the game for 18 months, but he still moves the needle like no other. And I'm wondering, I mean, I don't think this is a good thing for Kalen DeBoer. I don't think he didn't need this rumor. This doesn't do anything for him. It's like he didn't need any more pressure than he already had. But, many would say it was a fool's errand for DeBoer to go to Alabama and think that all this drama wouldn't be surrounding the situation anyway, right? It's not like Nick Saban, moved to Siberia and we never saw of him again. No, he's on ESPN every Saturday. He still has a job and an office on Alabama's campus. He's still Nick Saban. Of course, he was going to continue to cast a shadow over this program. That the downside for Kalen DeBoer is like no one at media days was really spending much time talking about Alabama's offseason, which was actually really good. They've been recruiting very well. Thought DeBoer made a good staff hire in Ryan Grubb to be his offensive coordinator. Alabama gained more than it lost in terms of quality in the transfer portal, but nobody wanted to talk about that. It was, is Nick Saban going to coach again?
He has transcended from greatest coach of all time to the greatest rumor in college coaching of all time, because you just throw it out there. You talk about Kalen DeBoer is on a great recruiting run. In fact, he's recruited well ever since he signed up with Alabama under, difficult. This is a huge transition to go from Nick Saban's program to back to just being Alabama football again. I mean, it was Nick Saban's Alabama for so long. So nonetheless, Kalen DeBoer goes in there. He doesn't win the championship, but he wins 9 games. He does well in recruiting. He lays the foundation for perhaps greater success. And this rumor kind of still just overwhelms him. I mean, we were talking about his recruiting success, and you can read anything obviously on the internet, but I was reading about suspicions that maybe Nick Saban is the reason Alabama's recruiting well. And then the mother of one recruit said, well, our signing with committing to Alabama was all about Coach Kalen DeBoer. I mean, we met Nick Saban, but it wasn't as though Nick Saban says, why don't you come and play for my program? I'm still here. I know, Nick, they call Kalen coach, but I'm still with Alabama, so you can be comfortable coming here. No, he's going to play for Kalen DeBoer, but that is so easy, isn't it? It's so easy to start a rumor now and have the rumor get legs very quickly.
Well, yeah, and if you're a rival fan base and you see these photos of Nick Saban popping up in photos with these recruits, it's like, oh, well, this is the guy behind all the, that's an easy theory to plant for a rival fan base, right? That Nick Saban is the engine behind Alabama recruiting, when all evidence would suggest no, he's just a guy that poses in some photos when he's available and recruits want to see him on campus. And what recruit wouldn't want to see him on campus, right? If you're a 17-year-old thinking about playing for Alabama football and it's like, oh, hey, Nick Saban's got an office, 500 yards away. Would you like to walk over there and shake his hand and get a photo? Of course they do, right? But it doesn't mean any more or less than that. But acknowledging, John, that we aren't necessarily in the know and not acting as if we did speak to someone in the know on this subject, what do you think about the general idea of Nick Saban returning to coaching, particularly in college football, because that's where our focus is, right? He'll turn 74 this year. He wasn't functioning at his peak when he retired, but he retired after a loss in the college football playoff semifinals. It wasn't as if Alabama had fallen off a cliff. It had relinquished the dominance that we saw in 2020, but it was still an annual playoff contender. Now, we know Saban soured on the landscape of college sports. Players have more freedom than ever. They're making more money than ever. Coaches don't have the omnipotence that they used to enjoy, that Saban thrived upon during his dynastic run. And as I said, he's turning 74 this year. We know he's been active on the golf course. He's active on ESPN. He's got his foundation. He's in this advisory role with Alabama, and he splits his time at his home in Jupiter, Florida, as well. So, do you think? Could you see a world in which Nick Saban is itching for a comeback? Not just itching for it, but actually turns it into a reality. I mean, I think a lot of retired folks wonder about, oh, what would it be like if I went back to work? And they do nothing about that, right? They sign up for their next tee time. Do you think Nick Saban could actually return to college football?
I could see where Nick Saban would have regrets about leaving something he did for so long, and something in which he's so accomplished and so good at and enjoys so much. but I would like to think that if he did had have thoughts or have regrets and think about maybe I need to come back, that he would run it by his wife,
Hmm.
Miss Terry, as he likes to call her, and she would say, "Nick, why did you stop coaching? You're the head guy at the program in college football. Why did you stop?" Well, if he thinks about that, I would think he'd be hesitant to return, just as I think Urban Meyer is now hesitant to return. I'm sure to somebody would hire him if he sought a job, but I just think all this NIL stuff and the transfer portal, it's not business the way Nick Saban was accustomed to doing it. He doesn't want to have to sell a player on staying with his program. He doesn't want to have to think about who's making how much money as a coach. Now, to me, if Nick Saban felt like the need, I think one of the things you lose when you get out of coaching, you can get another job, but you lose that competitiveness. You can't, you can be a consultant, you can be on TV, but you're not really competing when you're doing that. And I think a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes miss that competitiveness. So if he came back in a different role as, say, a general manager,
Hmm.
now you the counterpoint would be, well, he doesn't want to deal with that. No, he doesn't want to deal with it as a coach. But what if he's general manager, and what if he evaluates players and and manages that aspect of the program? He wouldn't have to. He wouldn't have to go out and beg recruits to sign there. He could just say, "Okay, here's what I think this guy's worth. Here's what I think we need." I mean, Nick Saban's not just a really good coach, he's super organized, and he's so good at building a total program, not just building a team, but building a total program. I could see him in flourishing in a role like that. I don't know if that's something he would want to do, but I just don't see him coming back and being on the sideline. I just don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, to the idea of him being a college football general manager, John, I think about this from the head coach's lens. Like, I mean, it would be, I think just, um, I mean, you'd be kneecapping your own tenure to make Nick Saban your general manager because every Russian bot on X, the next time you make a bad play call, the next time you lose a game, all 7 million Russian bots are going to be calling for you to be fired and your general manager to take over, right? I mean, you have the greatest of all time as your general manager. Now you're one bad play call away from setting yourself up for a firing, even if Nick Saban doesn't want to return to coaching. So Nick Saban may well be good in that role. I'm struggling to see a head coach who would make that move and anoint him into such a high position, knowing that at the first sign of trouble, every fan, every booster is going to want to run the coach out of town and anoint Nick as the head coach,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, I think what it would have to be, I think it would have to be a younger coach, and a coach who was just grateful to get the Alabama head coaching job and who had a relationship with Nick Saban.
See,
Not saying that would go ahead.
I kind of put Alabama aside a little bit in this, John, because no, I don't think it's great that this rumor came out days before Kalen DeBoer took the stage on at media days, but also I think there are others in the SEC who are much closer to the hot seat than Kalen DeBoer. I think about someone like Hugh Freeze at Auburn. If this rumor is not great for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, I think it's even worse for someone like Hugh Freeze at Auburn, who's closer to the hot seat. And you think, oh well, would Nick Saban ever do something like that? I have no idea. But let's just look in the past. Nick Saban came and revived LSU football, raised it up, a proud, downtrodden program, raised it up, left, and then comes back years later, not to LSU, but to an SEC rival, another proud program looking to be reinvigorated at Alabama, and does exactly that, right? And so, like, Nick Saban set the bar for himself so high at Alabama, it would be impossible for him to ever go back to Alabama and meet his own bar. And I don't think Nick Saban is is coming back to college football coaching. I don't know about these in the know people Greg McElroy talked to, but maybe I'll be surprised, and we'll see. I wouldn't 100% rule it out, but it would surprise me if he's back on a college sideline next season. But if you told me that Nick Saban was going to be back on a college sideline, I don't think I would predict that it would be at Alabama. I think I would say it would be somewhere else that's well resourced. Donors got a lot of money, a program where it's fired a coach who is a loser and is looking for a savior. That to me would be in the fine, the small chance that this thing has any life at all. That to me is the path forward.
Oh, I agree. You're right. Nick Saban is smart enough to know that he can't top what he did at Alabama. He's not going there and win 6 national championships, going back there and winning 6 more. He's not going to win a string of national championships. To me, there would be the attraction of building a program. I think that's what Nick Saban likes doing as much as anything. Now, I know he likes coaching defensive backs because that's his position of expertise, and he likes working hands-on with those guys. But I think he loves the ability to build a program and to build a team. And so why not go to a place where there's building to be done, where there's building to be is needed? I don't think he'd go to Auburn either because I think he's been too entrenched with Alabama, and that means too much to him.
Mm-hmm.
Although he did go from he was a coach at LSU, and LSU, one of its biggest rivals, Alabama. And that turned a lot of LSU fans against him, even though there was a Miami NFL job in between. But if he would go, man, let's just say SMU, Texas Tech, go somewhere where they have the money, the NIL money, and he's got a free reign.
Well, that's just it, right? If Nick Saban were to go anywhere, and again, I want to stress that I find this unlikely, not impossible, but unlikely. If he were to go anywhere, he's going to go somewhere with a resource advantage, right? And
Sure.
fantastic coach. He's proven himself at every turn in college football. Understand all that. And also, he was operating with some resources advantages throughout different stops in his careers, right? I mean, he's not going to go to a pauper and try to make them 6-6, right? He's not going to Kent State, his alma mater, and going to try to turn Kent State into a 6-6 football program. That I feel supremely confident in saying is not happening. But you're right. Somewhere with the resources to their advantage. Suppose you could say who knows, but yeah, to me this is like catnip for SEC media days. Maybe not much or any truth behind it, but hey, somebody said it on the radio and then said it again and then denied their own rumor, and it just so happens to be someone who used to play for Nick Saban. I mean, really, this is just the perfect type of story to gain some legs at media days, particularly when you have all the coaches then giving some merit to it. Lane Kiffin said on the Paul Feinbaum show, it's quote, malpractice for Nick Saban to not be coaching. Brian Kelly said it would be, quote, a great day if Nick Saban returned to coaching. Be careful what you wish for there, Brian.
Yeah. Would Brian want to see him return to LSU? I don't think so. I mean, the last 3 coaches at LSU have won national titles. Brian hasn't. Yeah. What about you bring up the hot seat coaches, Hugh Freeze at Auburn? What about Brent Venables at Oklahoma? I mean,
program with some resources.
A program with history, resources, and money, certainly. And so there you go. Nick Saban could step right in there. Probably some of these other coaches didn't like you. You talk about Kalen DeBoer. I'm not sure any of these coaches want to hear about Nick Saban maybe coming back to coaching.
Except for Brian Kelly, who thinks it would be, quote, a great day.
Of course, yeah. I mean, but you can't – but the thing is, when that comes out there and you're asked to respond, as all these coaches will be,
sure.
What do you think about the Coach Saban? You can't say, I hope I never see that guy again.
And I like what Kirby Smart said about the idea of Nick Saban returning to coaching. Kirby said he thought about hiring Nick for a assistant coach position on his staff, but he thought Nick might be overqualified for the job, so went in a different direction.
Kirby's good on his feet.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Final thought on this, John, before we move over to some predictions that our company put out this week for the SEC. Final thought on this. You mentioned Urban Meyer. Urban's been one of those names you've kind of kicked up for jobs when they come open over the years. You've cooled on that a little bit now in this NIL era. You seem to think Urban seems to be in the right place on television, and that may be the right place for him at this juncture where the players have all this power and freedom. May not be a return to the coaching. But let's play in a hypothetical universe, right? And say one of these, let's say both these guys were to return to coaching, Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. They're both going to get back into coaching for, say, they're going to fire it up for another 5 years. They're going to go somewhere to a program, not Kent State, somewhere that's not an absolute joke. They're going to go to a program, coach there for 5 years. Who do you think would do it better in this landscape, in this terrain, in a 5-year run? Urban Meyer or Nick Saban? Who would you back in that situation?
Whoa, man, that was that's a tough one, because I can't see either one of these guys failing.
Yeah,
I mean, I see them meeting for a national championship at their back, and I would probably say I would probably bet on Urban Meyer, because
he's got the age advantage. Urban 61, Nick's 73. I don't know if that's influencing your thinking.
No, it's not. Not at my age. I'm
well,
saying,
that's
yeah,
true.
the old guy. Yeah, I like the old guy. Sure, he's experienced, savvy. No, I think Urban Meyer, no matter, they are similar in that they always want to win more. That they have that need. But I think Urban Meyer hates losing even more than Nick Saban does. I just think Urban Meyer is so driven. And that's probably why his doctor would tell him, Urban, you need to stay where you are. Your psyche just won't handle this. But I do think he would be so determined to prove, okay, Nick Saban's the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT. And Urban would say, I'm going to show people who the GOAT is. And I think if Urban Meyer returned to coaching, his dream would be for Nick Saban to return and for them to meet for a national championship.
Oof. Boy, those columns just write themselves.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we'll leave this rumor behind unless Greg McElroy wants to revive it further and then try to kill it off later. But USA Today Network, John, released its predicted order of finish for the SEC this week before the media at large will release its predicted order of finish later in the week. As we record this, the overall media's predicted order of finish has not been put out, but USA Today Network's is. The interesting part, I think, is sort of the top of the pecking order here in the SEC. So 15 people voted in this, John, from our company, from the network. 12 of the 15, so 80%, if my math checks out there, 12 of the 15 voted Texas to win the SEC. Now, you and I both really like Texas. We think they are fittingly on the short list of national championship front runners, and I think in anybody's power rankings of the SEC, Texas would be near the top. But I thought it was staggering, I think, to see Texas get 12 of the 15 first place votes. I'll give you the top 5 here. The top 5 goes like this: it's Texas number 1, number 2 Georgia, number 3 LSU, number 4 Alabama, number 5 South Carolina. I will also tell you the 3 teams other than Texas to receive first place votes. Georgia got 1 vote, Alabama got 1 vote, and then Oklahoma, which checked in at number 8 in the predicted order of finish. The Sooners, though, did get 1 vote to win the conference. So, what do you think about A, the top five, and B, Texas not only being the favorite, but at least according to this vote by our USA Today network, the runaway favorite to win the SEC?
Well, first of all, I want to comment on, since it is my company, I want to know why I wasn't asked to vote.
That might be a worrying question, John.
Well, it might just lead to an ultimatum. Ultimatum now. Next season, either I vote or I'm gone.
You think you'll be given the power to make that demand? I'm wondering if this is more of a George Costanza moment where you've been fired, but you just keep showing up to work.
Well, let's postpone that.
Have you checked your email recently, John?
Matter of fact, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I trust
think
that.
I think if you asked the head honcho there, it said, "Hey, I was wondering why John wasn't asked to vote in the that preseason college football poll for the SEC." I think the response might be John who, but I'm just guessing. Okay. Yeah, I think Texas is certainly a championship contender, but I would have LSU. I'm sold on LSU. I think it has the best roster in college football, built through the transfer portal.
Yeah, I had a hard time ranking LSU. Boy, I tell you, it shows you how quickly I forget these things. I either had LSU third or fourth. I think if I were picking teams, like assigning percentage chances of teams winning the SEC, I might have LSU second. I don't know that I would have them number one, but I might have them second. But then when I do like things like this predicted order of finish, I spend so much time like looking at schedules, and I think LSU's got a difficult schedule draw. They're on the road at Alabama. They're on the road at Ole Miss. So two of their tougher games come away from home, and just in general, I think it's a pretty tough schedule draw for LSU. And so when I get down to like doing predicted order of finishes, that gives me a little pause. But when I think about teams that just have the talent to win an SEC championship, that's where I agree with you. I think LSU is on that list of teams that have the talent to win a conference championship, to contend for a national championship. They have all that. So yes, it is a pretty rugged schedule. One of, I think, the most rugged schedules in the SEC. Florida and Oklahoma and a couple others would like a word, but I think LSU's right up there. But yeah, when it comes down to talent, I think you're right. And so that leads me to the question, John. I mean, Brian Kelly spent the offseason really embracing expectations, and why not? He's in year 4. There's no sense at this point in looking in the rearview mirror or blaming your predecessor or talking about woulda, coulda, shoulda from years gone by. You gotta just embrace the expectations, I think, in year 4 and talk a big game because, well, if you lose, this is really headed one way anyway. And hey, what's the worst thing that happens? Brian Kelly's got a guaranteed contract, so they're going to pay the man one way or the other. Might as well embrace the expectations. But when you say you like them as the favorite to win the conference, you think they got the talent to do that. I agree with all that. And then we look at the schedule. It wouldn't shock me if LSU goes 8-4, 9-3 with that schedule. So what happens then if that's the case? Like, is it playoff or bust for Brian Kelly and LSU this year?
I don't
Or
think
should
it
it
is.
be?
I don't think it is. I mean, it's not as though he's flopped, and it's not over as though he took over the program at the top of its game. The schedule has been very arduous, and I think outside the conference, for example, this year, I really don't like the idea of scheduling an opponent of Clemson's caliber on its home field for your opener. I don't see the the advantages in that. But can LSU go 10-2 with that schedule? I think it can. And I think once it gets in the playoffs, I don't see any. I wonder a little bit about LSU's offensive line because it's revamped.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no team in the country, Ohio State included, I don't think that can match the array of firepower that LSU has offensively at the skill positions. Just four deep at wide receiver, four receivers who are accomplished, two very talented tight ends. I think you can take four wide receivers and two tight ends off this team will all play in the NFL. And I think K. Dermott, running back, has proven himself, and LSU has one of the top running backs in the country coming in. The only question I have is about its offensive line. The defense is vastly improved over last year. Vastly.
Personnel-wise, I agree with you. I'm struggling to shake off a little bit of the reality that it's been a few years now since we've seen a really competent LSU defense, but I also know that I shouldn't be basing my opinion too much off the past because so much of the defensive personnel has been revamped and improved. I feel like with some portal additions, and then I know Harold Perkins has not really lived up to the hype that came, once we first saw him his true freshman season. But he was injured last year. He's back now. He has to help, right? I mean, I don't know that he will attain the heights of stardom that we once thought were possible for him, but I have to think his return will help, and all these portal additions. I mean, that defense just has to be better. I know, like I said, it's hard for me to shake off the history of what they've been the past few years, but this group of defensive talent doesn't reflect the personnel that they've had the last few years.
Blake, I look at LSU's defensive depth chart and see half a dozen guys that could make all SEC that are at least candidates, first, second, and third team all SEC possibilities. That's a vast upgrade over what LSU had. And I think it has a quarterback who can make all the throws, as they like to say. And no, he wasn't always what he needed to be in the biggest games, but few guys are. And I just think that experience will serve him well this year. And I think he's surrounded with so much talent. He's for what he can do. He can run when he needs to. He's not a statue back there, but I think Garrett Nussmeier's strength is just throwing the ball. And he's got a bunch of guys that can go get it. And I think he can let them work for him. I think the combination is going to be dynamic. I think this could be the best offense in the country, even though I'm not sold on the offensive line right now because of it hasn't played together as starters.
As I looked at this predicted order of finish, with which you very regrettably did not get to vote in, John, I wonder how you could have turned this sort of upside down. Of course, you look for overrated, underrated teams. Look at Missouri all the way down at number 12 in this predicted order of finish. I had the Tigers much higher than that based on a couple things. One, Missouri hit it really strong, really well in the transfer market this offseason. Maybe not quite as well as LSU and Ole Miss, but Missouri did really, really well in the portal. But beyond that, like when you're doing these predicted order of finishes, you have to look at the schedule. I mean, that's what the order of finish is going to be based on, is playing the teams that are actually on your conference schedule. Missouri, they drew the most accommodating schedule of any SEC team. Of the 8 SEC opponents, John, only 3 of them finished 8-5 or better last season. They don't play anybody in the SEC that made the playoff last season. Now, there's some teams on there that could be better. They're on the road at Auburn this year, which went 5-7 last year. We both expect Auburn to be better. They got a road game at Alabama. They got a road game at Oklahoma, which we expect to be better. But when you factor in schedules, some of these teams that are kind of low in this predicted order of finish, Tennessee's another one. Tennessee's at number 10 in this predicted order of finish. And I just think, okay, yeah, we don't know what Tennessee has going at quarterback, but they have a schedule draw that includes 3 of the 4 worst teams in the conference. I mean, that is just a huge advantage, and I think that has to be factored in when you're making conference predictions. I don't know how people vote in this thing. Maybe they don't look that close at schedule, and they just look at this as which teams they would rank highest in a power rankings. But to me, in a predicted order of finish, that's not the same as power rankings. You have to actually look at a team's schedule. And so I say Tennessee at number 10 and Missouri at number 12. I think those teams are both too low because they got 2 of the most favorable schedule draws in the SEC.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, Blake. I look at I look at as LSU and Texas at the top, Georgia a little behind, and then Alabama. Those 4 teams, I see. But then I look at the next 8 teams where I see one of those teams easily could emerge as a playoff team. I think they're very closely grouped, and the schedule is such a factor. See, that poll's very high on South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like South Carolina's schedule in the least. I could see South Carolina going 7-5. Yeah, I just see Missouri, as you pointed out, in Tennessee, much more favorable schedules. People seem to be higher on Florida than I am. I look at Florida's schedule. There's no way. It's why I don't think Billy Napier will make it as coach. The schedule is just too demanding, and it's not just whom they play; it's when they play them and the sequence of games. It's just I look at Oklahoma the same way. I think Oklahoma could be one of the more improved teams in the league. Certainly, I think its offense could be the most improved in the SEC. Certainly, plenty of room for improvement. But getting Jaden Ott from Cal as a running back and John Mateer from Washington State as a QB, yeah, I think. But then I look at Oklahoma's schedule and I wave goodbye to Brent Venables.
Right.
Great run, coach. Now let somebody else do this.
And I thought the same way in filling out my pecking order, John. I had Oklahoma at 10 on my pecking order. If I was just doing like who's got the best teams in the SEC, I think I would have been tempted to put them higher than 10 because of all the additions you talk about. But then when you put it up against that schedule, it's like, well, they're going to lose some of these games. They're not going to lose all of them, but there's not many layup games on Oklahoma's schedule. I count some. I know the SEC folks would tell you, no, there's no layups in this conference. Well, that's debatable, but there are still teams you would rather play as compared to teams that you wouldn't. And I'm just looking for that layup game on Oklahoma's schedule within an SEC lineup that goes Auburn, Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. That schedule does not include Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Kentucky, or Mississippi State. The 4 teams that you maybe wouldn't mind having on your schedule. Again, we can argue about whether it's a gimme putt or not. Vanderbilt, in particular, last year proved that they weren't a gimme putt. But those 4 teams, you want to see at least one, if not 2 or 3, on your schedule. Oklahoma's got none of those teams on their schedule, and so yeah, I'm with you. I think the roster's better, but how many of those 8 landmines are they going to survive? And then also they got Michigan on the schedule.
That schedule is why I keep thinking more of Tennessee. I mean, I've seen them ranked like 10th in the league in preseason publications. That's
well, they're ranked 10th in this pecking order.
Yeah, that's almost a consensus for Tennessee. But when you look at that schedule and you look at Josh Heupel's track record, I don't think there's any way that's happening. The 4 teams you mentioned, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky, the pretty much consensus 4 worst teams in the conference. Tennessee plays every one of them. Okay.
That's right. I thought it was 3 out of 4.
No, it's all 4.
It's all 4. I misspoke. Thanks for that clarity. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And then you factor in its toughest non-conference game is Syracuse, and it's establishes a 12 to 14-point favorite. Syracuse, a 10-win team of last year, is nowhere near a 10-win team now. Lost all of its playmakers, lost a quarterback who threw for about 4,000 yards, lost its best defensive lineman, in the portal. This is not. It's an average at best ACC team. That's its toughest non-conference. I see Tennessee starting out with 8 wins.
Hmm.
I just and then if you look a little deeper into Tennessee's schedule, it gets Florida and Oklahoma the last month of the season. Well, think about that. Uh, Oklahoma, how heavily it will rely on quarterback John Mateer, who rushed for over 800 yards last year. He's a true dual threat guy. He will carry a heavy load. Well, how will he handle that kind of schedule? He hasn't been hit the way he's going to get hit in the SEC. By the time he gets to Tennessee, I'm not even sure he'll be healthy enough to be the quarterback. I'm not saying that's likely, but it's something that could occur. And then Tennessee does get Oklahoma at home. But even Florida on the road, think how dependent Florida is on DJ Lagway, its quarterback, who's had recurring shoulder problems. Again, going through this rigorous schedule, by the time he gets to November in Tennessee, what kind of shape will he be in?
Yeah, the only thing I would say there, John, is as you know better than most, I mean, the swamp has been a house of horrors
Oh,
for
yeah,
for
sure.
Tennessee for
I,
2 decades now. So
I guess what
longer,
I'm,
really.
yeah, you're right. I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is how favorable this schedule is for Tennessee. I
Yeah,
think it's
completely
the
agree.
most favorable schedule in the conference when
I
you
think
come
Tennessee and Missouri,
Missouri.
yeah, right there. I mean,
Uh-huh.
Missouri, we talked about those 4 teams at the bottom. Missouri gets 3 out of the 4. They get Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. So I think they're both right there. Another one, John, that ranks 11th in this pecking order from the USA Today network is Auburn, and they're a team we've been kind of all over the map on. We talked about Auburn at length last week. We don't have to rehash all that, but it was notable. Hugh Freeze changed his tune a little bit at SEC Media Days. We mentioned earlier in the offseason, Hugh Freeze was talking about how he knows Auburn's got to make a bowl game this year. And we thought, Hugh, come on, it's year 3. A Birmingham Bowl ain't going to cut it. Well, Hugh changed his tune and he was talking about playoff
There
expectations
you go.
on the main stage at SEC Media Days. Okay, Hugh's had a necessary redirect there. And you look at Auburn's schedule, the SEC schedule's tough early on them, but then they have a run of games kind of in the middle of the slate where they have Arkansas, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt in succession. That's a pretty good 3-game draw there in the middle of your schedule. Before, of course, they close the SEC slate with the Iron Bowl. But yeah, they got Alabama in there, Georgia, Missouri, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. But Auburn, to me, remains that kind of mysterious team of the floor could be not not all that great. Floor could be about 6-6 with Auburn, or the ceiling, could be playoff contention. I don't feel strongly that they're going to be in the playoff, but playoff contention, that means like 9-3, and you're in the hunt, right? And with this schedule, I think it's possible, given what Auburn did in the transfer portal. They made a lot of acquisitions this offseason. Hugh Freeze had, I think, a much bigger sense of urgency in the portal halls. They got the new quarterback and Jackson Arnold. Auburn is, for me, maybe the most mysterious, or another word could be interesting, teams in the conference this year, because you got a coach on the hot seat, but you have a program that I think made some notable gains through the portal, and then they don't have a cupcake schedule, but they don't have one of the toughest draws in the conference either. I mean, Oklahoma would love for this schedule that Auburn has. So what do you think of Auburn there at 11 and their possibility to now, as Hugh says, not just make a bowl game but contend for the playoff?
Yeah, I think that's too low for Auburn. I think it has more potential than that. Receiving core probably second only to LSU's. Um, it's not it's certainly not as good across the board, but it helped itself in the transfer portal. Um, and when what's so crucial for these teams, all these teams we're talking about, you just can't afford to lose to a team you're supposed to beat. We talk about those bottom 4 teams. Okay. Well, don't lose to them. I mean, you just can't. Ole Miss last year lost to Kentucky. It cost it a berth in the playoff. No doubt about it. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Cost it a berth in the playoff. Tennessee lost to Arkansas. Still made the playoff. But those bottom 4 teams, you better beat. But history tells us somebody's going to lose to them. Somebody that's a playoff contender will lose to them.
John, we started this episode talking about rumors, and as you know, we have a very dedicated fan base and audience here on SEC Football Unfiltered. We thank them all. If they haven't already, we ask them to rate, subscribe, review the podcast. But for our dedicated fans, I'm wondering if you could snuff out any rumor that you're thinking about joining Nick Saban in retirement. That's not true, is it? I mean, I don't need to be looking for a new co-host, do I?
No, but in a fact,
that was a pregnant pause that meant my question.
No, I was taken aback that you would bring it up. I've made this crystal clear, I think, to everybody within the company. Maybe I need to re-emphasize it. My track record speaks it for myself. I don't want to hear about age. And I don't think my lawyers, well, maybe my lawyers do want to hear about age. Okay.
They might want to get to the bottom of what happened to your all SEC ballot, John.
I'm sure someone's has looked into that already. Marcos Garza, very strong Knoxville attorney.
He's going to find that ballot that's gone missing.
He's very meticulous, and I think we'll have that talk maybe this evening.
All right. And we'll try to find your ballot when we come back on the pod next week and go over what it would have been had you been allowed to vote. Until then, thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.